Okay, section 1.5 deals with the order of operations. So the order of operations involves 4 steps. So we're going to go through each of them. The first one says do all operations inside parentheses. The second one says we're going to raise numbers to a power if we have exponents. That's what we're referring to there. And the third one says we're going to multiply and divide numbers as we go from the left to the right. And the same thing with adding and subtracting. We're going to add or subtract as we go from the left to the right. So many of us probably learned this as PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but there's our parentheses, here's our exponents, here's our multiplying and dividing, here's our adding and subtracting. The one thing that I do want to mention about the multiplying and dividing and the adding and subtracting, it's not always multiply then divide. It's whichever one comes first from left to right. So, first problem here, 8 divided by 2 times 3 plus 4 squared. First step, we don't have any parentheses, so we don't need to worry about it. Second step, raise any numbers to a power. Well, we do have an exponent. I'm going to write out the entire problem. 8 divided by 2 times 3 plus. Now, 4 squared is going to give me 16. Multiply and divide. We have to go in order from left to right. Well, from left to right, that's actually the first thing that I see. So 8 divided by 2 is going to give us 4 times 3 plus 16. We still have multiplying left. 4 times 3 is going to give us 12. And then finally, 12 plus 16 will leave us with 28. The important thing is to make sure that on both steps 3 and 4 that we go in order from the left to right. Okay. So let's take a look at the next one. We do have some exponents here. So negative 3 to the third. That means again negative 3, negative 3, negative 3. So that's going to give me a positive 9 times a negative 3. That is a negative 27. Minus 2 to the fourth. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. If I multiply those together, that gives me 4. If I multiply those together, that gives me another 4. That's 16. Okay. So now, let's think about these two numbers here. We have negative 27 minus 16. Remember we said a positive number is how much money I have, a negative number is how much money I owe. I owe you $27. I borrow another 16. Well, I've already owed you 27 and I borrow 16 more. I now owe you a grand total of $43. Okay, let's try the next one here. Notice there's no parentheses. We don't have any exponents. All we have is multiplying, adding, and subtracting. So we got to go multiplying first because we don't have parentheses. We don't have exponents. So 2 times 6 gives us 12. 5 times 3 gives us 15. 7 times 4 gives us 28. So we're going to go left to right now. 12 plus 15 is 27 minus 28. Again, think about this. I have $27, but I already owe you 28. If I owe you $28, I only have 27, and I give you the $27 that I have, I still owe you one more dollar, right? Okay. Look at this next problem here. It's got a lot of pieces, but the first thing I notice is we do have parentheses. So I'm going to write this 2 that we have in front times 2 minus 3. Remember, I have $2. I owe you 3. I still owe you 1. Plus 6 divided by 3 plus, let's see, 8 minus 5. I have $8. I owe you 5. I'm left with 3. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and deal with our exponents. So, negative 1 to the third. Again, if it helps, write it on the side. So that's a positive 1 times a negative 1. That's still a negative 1. So we're going to go 2 times negative 1 plus 6 divided by 3 plus 3 squared we know is 9. Okay, now we're going to do our multiplying and dividing as we go from the left to the right. So I'm going to multiply 2 times negative 1, negative 2, plus 6 divided by 3, positive 2, plus 9. Now we can do our adding. There's no subtracting here, but we can do our adding from left to right. Well, if I owe you $2 and I have $2, we're even. So our final answer is just 9. The one thing I really want to point out about these problems is, if you notice in this problem, from this line to this line, we did one step. We figured out that part. From this line to this line, we did one step. We figured out our exponents. From this line to this line, we did one step. We figured out that number, and we figured out that number. And then from this line to that line, we just went, left to right. My point, though, is I don't want to try to go from this right here to that right there with minimal steps. It's better for me to write out more steps and go slower, because if I try to go from here, say, to there, and I make a mistake, then in trying to go faster, all I did is really create more work, because I got to do it all over again, right? Alrighty. Let's take a look at the next problem here. So again, notice I don't have any parentheses. We don't have any exponents, but we do have multiplying and dividing. Remember, we have to go from left to right. Well, I see the division before I see the multiplication. So we're going to write 4 plus. Let's figure out how many times does 3 go into 42. So 42 divided by 3 is 14. Okay. So right here we're going to write the number 14 times 2 minus 8. Now we still have multiplication, so we have to do that next. 4 plus 14 times 2 is 28 minus 8. Okay. Let's go left to right. 4 plus 28 is 32 minus 8. And 32 minus 8 is a total of 24. Okay. All right. So in our next problem here, we do have exponents. So I'm going to write 11 minus 3 times 16 divided by negative 6. Okay. Now we need to multiply, because I see the multiplying before I see the division. 11 minus 3 times 16 is 48 divided by negative 6. Now in this problem here, I want to go ahead and rewrite this as 11 plus a negative 48 divided by a negative 6. Remember what we said, subtract means add the opposite of that number. So now we're going to have 11. A negative 48 divided by a negative 6 is a positive 8. And 11 plus 8 gives us a total of 19. Okay. All right. So here we have 7 plus 36 divided by 12 times 3 minus 14. So my first step here is I'm going to write, I don't have any parentheses, I don't have any exponents, so I have to do my multiplying and dividing as I go from left to right. So 7 plus, let's do our division. 36 divided by 12 is 3 times 3 minus 14. Now let's do our multiplication. 7 plus 9 minus 14. Now we can add. 7 plus 9 is 16. 16 minus 14 is 2. Alright, so in our next problem here, I definitely see parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to start writing here. 3. I'm going to do what's in parentheses first. I have $5. I owe you 7. I'm going to owe you 2. Okay. Now, I have to take care of my exponent. Remember, that's a negative 2 in parentheses. So that means a negative 2 times another negative 2 is a positive 4. So 3 times 4 minus 6 times 3. At this point, we can go ahead and start multiplying. 3 times 4 is 12. Minus 6 times 3 is 18. Let's think about this again for a minute. I have $12, but I owe you 18. Once I pay you, I will still owe you 6 more, right? Okay. So for our last problem here, out of 1.5, we have decimals, so I'm definitely going to use my calculator. I have to do what's on the inside of the parentheses first. So let me go ahead and write the first part. Okay. I'm going to take my calculator. Let me grab it over here. We're going to take 0.5, right, minus 0.7. That gives me a negative 0.2. Okay, so right here, negative 0.2. That's still being raised to the third power. Okay, so let's multiply that 3 times. 0.2 negative, right, because we have 3 of them, times 0.2 negative equals, so look at our answer, negative 0.008. So 0.05 plus 1.4 minus a negative 0.00. Is it 2 zeros and then an 8? I believe so. Yes. Okay. So now let's go ahead and add these two numbers together. So I'm going to take my calculator here. 0.05, excuse me, plus 1.4, 1.45. Okay. Now remember, minus the negative. We're going to change that to a positive. We're going to take the opposite of that number there. Okay. So now 1.45 plus 0.008. Here's our answer, 1.458. So if you notice in this particular problem, I'm really taking my time using my calculator, going slowly, because again, I want to make sure that the answer that I come up with is correct.